Party people, what is going on? This is episode 119 of From the Grave podcast. I'm your host, Scott. Very special guest on today. A friend of mine, Peter Marinelli, sober, 35 years, works in the recovery space. He's the owner of the Archway Foundation, which is a non-profit organization that helps addicts and alcoholics achieve sobriety. This was an incredible episode. We talk about everything spirituality, man, what it is like to go through the adversity of the ego and transcending the ego, opening up the Spirit of God, learning how to follow that still small voice. We talk about letting go in the aspect of surrender in early recovery, and then facilitating that and weaving that through our day-to-day life the longer we stay sober, staying in that aspect of surrender, how to stay in love with the process. We talk about spiritual teachers and books, bodies of work, spiritual work that have helped us through our journey. And it's just an absolute incredible episode. And Pete, thanks again for coming on. I hope you enjoy this. If you want to call in to the episode or send us a voice memo, which we have been getting a lot of, that we've been playing and responding to each episode, you send an email at fromthegravepodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you have an idea or a suggestion for a guest to come on the show, you can do that as well. But we just want your participation and engagement, and we love every bit of it. So check us out from thegravepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much. Peace.
What's the eternal principle?
But one.
Which is?
Well, we call it God, but that personifies it.
Pete Marinelli, how you doing, man?
I'm good.
Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and it's been too long.
It's been at least 2 years since I've seen you.
2 years since you see me. And our relationship started 7 years ago. All right. And I'm gonna give you a little, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but
Do I owe an amends here?
huh?
Do I owe you an amends?
We'll talk about that after. So how can I word this? All right. So I was sober in New York at a very early age. Syracuse, New York is where I'm from. I'd gotten sober like 24, stayed sober to like 3.5, 4 years or something. Anyways, I went back out, right? Mm-hmm. But I was very much involved in a 12-step program, listened to a lot of speaker CDs, circuit speakers, all that stuff. I had come across some of your tapes and stuff a while back, and I was very much impressed. And in my suffering of this disease, I would still try and yearn towards what I knew the solution was, right? Because I had lived it for a while. At any rate, I remember searching your name or something on YouTube, and this place you had worked for 7 years ago, one of your videos had come up, and you were talking about some spirituality, spiritual principles. And then I had, in that moment, called the place you worked for, and they were like, I can have you on a plane tomorrow. And I said, okay. And then about 60 days later, I was sitting in front of you. So basically, long story short, you are the reason why I'm in South Florida. I don't know if you ever knew that.
I did not know that.
Isn't that a trip?
Yeah.
And now we sit here right now?
I had no idea.
Yeah, neither did I.
Did we meet each other, or were we just kind of two ships passing in the night?
It was for you, it was two ships passing. There was so much census in that community at the time.
Yes.
And you were more over in a specific branch of a program.
That's right.
In the whole, which I never got to go to. But anyways, we had gotten sober around the same parts at that time. We were in Deerfield, Pompano, that area. Yep. And then we had made connections, and then it just built and built and built over time.
7 years ago. That means I got down here, oh Lord, January 2011.
Okay.
So you were here a few years later.
Yep. Yeah, I had gotten, and I didn't say sober for a while in Florida. But then it actually clicked for the last time at 2016.
Yeah.
And you know what I noticed is that, I came into my first treatment when I was 19, exposed to this whole 12-step stuff at a very early age. Been to 7 treatment centers, among other state-run facilities and detoxes and all that. And what I can find in the difference of the last several years of my life being sober, feeling truly free, is I usually say I felt more free with 14 days sober this time than I ever did with 4 years in New York before. And I can attribute it to this is I always felt like I was trying to get myself sober. I was always trying to fix myself. I was always trying to surrender. And I feel like this time, tell me if this makes any sense, I feel like I was surrendered, Can you talk about, so this principle, right, of surrender, of letting go, how do people usually attack it in an improper way, but then some seem to grab onto it in an effortless way?
Attack what in an improper way?
Surrender.
There's probably as many people that are out as probably have that many stories about the surrender. My experience, and I only can speak from that, is I just don't have the ability to surrender. Circumstances brought me and many others to a place of being really open and willing to change. But my experience has been, I don't have that kind of capacity, that kind of insight, that kind of willingness to or knowledge to really understand what a surrender is. That comes from God, where we get surrendered. And that comes to a point where the ego gets crushed for a brief moment, where, as I always call it, desperation screams louder than the ego for a brief moment. Yeah. And what happens is there's this, if you will, a vacuum, just to give you an illustration, a vacuum. And in that vacuum, when the ego gets crushed, there's a spot for God's light to come in. Everything shifts in that moment. In fact, there's no need to hit any more bottoms. Once that bottom happens, we'll hit bottom after bottom. They have trap doors. When we hit that bottom, and I've heard enough stories over the years, and I know my own, when God's light gets in, there's no need to hit any more bottoms. But as this one famous author says, we fall up into the hands of a merciful God who orchestrated the whole thing from the get-go. God's been trying to get our attention forever, and still is. Even those of us who are sober and on a spiritual path, whether it's a respective 12-step fellowship or church or therapy, whatever it might be, God's still pursuing and always giving. When the ego's out of the way, we listen different. We hear it. We're paying attention more. The mind is not involved. There's no thinking going on. So the surrender, as I said a moment ago, everyone will have their own story about how that happened. And if someone says, hey, I surrendered on such and such a date, I'm not going to get into a debate with them. That's their story, the truth they hear now. And some of us have a story where we live life forward and understand it backwards, where we got surrendered, scooped up out of the mess.
Yeah.
It's something we could have never done on our own. And when you look at how the ensuing dots get connected, people are put in our path, or a treatment center is put in our path, or a 12-step meeting or a person from that meeting is put in our path, and everything seems to connect, and we gain momentum. We get traction, and there's no looking back. That's not to say someone in recovery is not going to have the valleys. I mean, life happens, the ebb and flow in life. We're just not, life is no longer our master anymore. You know, if someone, you go to get your car washed, and you kind of pull in, and you got the attendant there, and he's telling you pull up, and he'll say go left and go right with the wheel, pull up, and then he'll do this. And you put it in neutral. And then you let go. And the machine does all the work. But you had to be willing to listen to him. When he said left, you told him the wheel left. When he said right, turn the wheel right. And when he said this, you pop it in neutral. I'm following instructions. I really want to get this car cleaned. and then it does it on its own. Well, we fight and we struggle and we want to run it ourselves until we run out of options, and then someone says, do this and follow that, and we listen, and there's a point in recovery where you let go and let God do what God's going to do. And sometimes God will operate through the people that we meet along the way. It's a completely different movement, a huge contrast from, thanks for your 5 suggestions, I'll take 3 of them. The other 2 I got. And we're going to run into ourselves again and again and again. And the sad part is many of us, most folks who suffer from addiction don't survive. That's the reality. So those of us who are sober, clean and sober, we're a very small population. And, living down in South Florida, you get 2 or 3 a week who are no longer here.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, you're talking about this aspect of letting go, which has been a huge theme of my life, specifically the last couple of years. Here's my question. So we come into the beginning, right? It's like we get, like you said, smacked, like where God's light becomes a little bit more important than the desperation of the ego, right? It makes its way through. So we're in this process of destruction, the wife and the kids, and we're losing the job, and we're homeless, and halfway I'm living in my car. I got no money. The creditors are after me. We're in this process of destruction. So it's like we're in this acute arena of learning how to let go. And you pretty much have no other shot or no other choice to just really let go of all this destruction. So now we stay sober several years. We get back in the drama and the opera life. We get the props back, and we're friends with the actors, and the show starts going on.
Yeah.
How do we stay in a surrendered, letting go state that we came in with, and why should we?
Our life depends upon it, to answer your second question. But if I'm spiritually fit, I'll be doing that. If I'm what I like to call spiritually anemic, life will take over. I'm not strong enough. I don't have the muscles, the spiritual muscles to do life. And so money becomes more important. I like the effect produced by money more than I do God right now, or going to a meeting, whatever fellowship we belong to, or even church. Or I like the effect produced by relationships or sex or gambling or food. So I'm going to go down these avenues. And eventually it'll take us out. What addiction or alcoholism, whatever adjective works, description works for you, what it does is, because a person, I'll use me, I'm physically sober, it doesn't mean I'm that much better. I still have the isms floating around. They're all up in the head. So what this thing does is go underground and resurface in other areas. They call sex sprees and food sprees and money sprees and gambling sprees ad infinitum, because I'm not okay with me. I can't sit down and have a conversation with you. I'm here, but my head is in 40 other places, and I need to get there to feel okay. And I get there, well, that's not okay. I need to get there to feel okay. And I'm just chasing all the time. Conversely, if I'm surrendered and I'm taking instructions and getting my what I call soul food, and I'm getting strong spiritually, life is not really my master anymore. I'm well grounded, and God is the most important part of my life. And my journey is to please Him, and in pleasing Him, I please others. But I can't heal what's not revealed. So what addiction or alcoholism likes to do is keep things hidden. And I'm always seeking to get, to grab the gold ring, and I get it, and it's not enough. I need to get healed, but first has to get revealed. And that comes through the forging out on an anvil that comes out of pain and suffering, where I realize of myself, I am nothing. I can't tie my own shoes without a 10-person committee. Now the ego says, well, that's ridiculous. Is it really? Is it really? I need to be reduced to, and I speak for myself, reduced to a place. It happened to me in 1988, where it came from here. Anything that comes from the mind is a lie. I discount it immediately. Any kind of thing that sounds logical or sounds like a good idea, if it's generated from the mind, it's got a motive. But something down in the soul speaks to us. That's the truth.
How do you know the difference?
Usually there's an angle, a selfish, self-seeking motive attached to the head all the time. It's a shortcut. It's also a really loud voice. This thing that comes from the soul is just a knowing. If you go to, if you were to visit a meeting, a 12-step fellowship meeting, and maybe you have someone up there sharing, and every once in a while, if you observe, you'll see one or several or a group of people give this big nod up and down when someone says something. That's not a conclusion of the mind. That's the spirit. It's almost a visceral reaction. Like, yes, that's the spirit acknowledging what it always knew. It's a knowing. And so when we're in that place of, I need to follow something different, whatever this God is, whoever he, she, it is, I know it's not me. It is not another person. I need to find this now. That's a quiet, still voice, and it's a knowing. You can't get away from that. It cuts through. It's happened to me and countless others. It cuts through all the noise all the time, and you pay attention to it. And depending on, my experience has been, depending on where we are spiritually, we'll listen to it a lot more or a lot less. If I'm not so spiritually fit, if I'm not doing the things to enhance this awakening, it'll just go by the. It's like driving in traffic and the cars are going the other way.
Yeah,
you see them, but you're not paying attention.
Yeah. So how do we do things to turn up the volume on that?
Well, turn up the volume and tell God to turn up the volume. I can't. God speaks in one voice.
I mean, to like,
I need to be
listen.
under the it's a biblical word, meekness. It doesn't mean feeble. It means humility. I need to come under his jurisdiction, willing to do that, under his command, willing to do that. The ego doesn't want to do that, but the soul is all about that. So it's a daily surrender, which is what I did early this morning.
Okay.
I was sharing with you earlier. I got up, it was 4:30 this morning, and I go into my prayer meditation. And one of the very first things after giving thanks to God for waking me up and giving me another opportunity today is I surrender everything. I surrender everything. It's in your hands. Just tell me where you need me to go today, what you need me to say today, what you need me to do today. Now, I would love to tell you I do that perfect all the time, but my mind gets involved. Well, maybe we can do this instead of that. Thank God it's not, I'm not grossly negligent. I stay in the saddle on most days, but I'm looking, I'm listening, and I'm gobbling up information. I like talking to people. Cultivate faithfulness. You know, it's another biblical thing. Cultivate faithfulness, which means I can generate it and, talk about God when the opportunities arises, but I can look for people who are walking in faithfulness. That cultivates it. Suddenly I have a whole community around me. I can't be faithful with you and go out there and then I'm going to discount it. Now I'm a hypocrite. So I walk with that. And when an opportunity in a conversation comes up about and there's an opportunity, there's a window that God's name can be brought up, I'm going to do it. You don't know whose door you're knocking on, saying, I'm glad you said that because I feel the same way and I'm always afraid to talk about it. Now I'm cultivating faithfulness. If I'm surrounding myself with people like that, it's kind of like this. So I want to get in shape, and I want to learn about my body. I want to learn what exercise to do. But if I'm hanging out in a bar with guys who are 300 pounds overweight with diabetic and high blood pressure, I'm going to get opinions. But if I hang out with you, you're a workout guy, I'm going to learn it's going to be my conversation. And you introduce me to some of your other friends who are all workout guys. They're eating good. They're working out. They're looking good. I'm going to learn a lot. It's going to be part of who I be at this point. I'm not naive. I'm not ignorant to it. It also generates excitement and passion. Well, it's the same thing with faithfulness or God. Recovery. Mm-hmm.
There's this line in recovery literature that says something to the effect of faith must work in and through us 24 hours a day or we perish. 24 hours a day. You know what I mean? Like, doesn't that seem like a very lofty proposal?
Well, they raised the bar, of course.
Yeah.
Because if they told an alcoholic, let's try for 4 hours a day, we'll take 2.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
Like, let's set this up here so these guys got something to reach for.
It is something to really take a look at. I mean, God's operating 24/7. And all they're asking me to do is to lean into that, to understand that if it's 3 o'clock in the morning or 3 in the afternoon, I'm going to cultivate faith. I'm going to lean on God before I lean on a human power or a book or anything. I'm an active member of my religious community, and we go to a building. It's a sacred building, but it's all to get me to the power I'm praying to. Very sacred ground when you walk into a religious community. I mean, people bow and on their knees and they're kissing saints and people say, you're kissing a ceramic statue. No, we're not. But all of that is to take me to the power I'm praying to. Yeah. And so it's there all the time. So yeah, 24 hours, 7 days a week, I need to know that should be my walk, leaning into faithless. If I want to take time off from that, now I'm in charge of my life. And when I'm in charge of my life, doing life on life's terms, I wind up in jail. I wind up drunk. I wind up in treatment on a good day. I wind up with pain and misery and humiliation, and all my friends are gone. My relationships are gone. And I become a scavenger, which is where I was in 1988. I don't want to go back. I don't want that guy ever to show up again. I don't want that life.
Talk to me about that guy a little bit in 1988. Where were you?
Sure.
What were you doing?
Just if
So
I may,
35 years sober.
Thank the good Lord, yeah.
Beautiful. You can hear him, right? Okay.
It's interesting when we talk about faithfulness 24/7 and praying and helping other people. Doing that compared to, I'll segue into your question here, what an addict or an alcoholic does to keep the drunk going or the high going is like kissing a newborn baby on the cheek. Praying a lot, helping others, maybe going to church, leaning into God and trying to have faith 24/7, trying to see all of God and everything. On the front, I say that's a lot of work. But if I compare that to what I did to keep the drunk going or the high going, again, it's like kissing a newborn on the cheek. You ever have a newborn in your arms? You see God in their eyes. You get goofy.
Yeah.
You start,
Right? Yeah, you do get
cooing
goofy.
with the baby, and
Yeah.
it's you don't even know there's people around. You're in the moment.
Yeah.
Oh no, let me think about going on another crack run. That's easier. Let me go on another heroin run. That's easier. In 1988, it's interesting. Someone just sent me pictures on my phone of a halfway and sober house I was in 1988 into 89. So I was counting days and months back then in a town called Hastings, Minnesota. And looking at the picture was interesting. I could almost hear the voices of the guys around. I was almost there. I can feel it. I could smell the air almost. And I didn't have a clue about anything, about recovery, about life, where it's going. All I knew is I'm above ground sucking air and I'm sober. This is fabulous. Because in June of 88, I had been through 6 treatment centers, about to go into my 7th, which I didn't know was going to happen. I was living in an abandoned building in an area called Alphabet City, Lower Manhattan, which I hear now you need a lot of money to move into. I don't know.
Wasn't like that back in the day, huh?
No, man. It was, you had the junkies, you had the drunks, you had these poor people who weren't, didn't have the resources to move out. So they were living in projects and they were stuck with the knuckleheads. Then the crack scene hit, and that was it. Everyone was copping and drunk, and it was nasty, and it was very, very dangerous. In fact, the city came up with something they called it Operation Pressure Point. which meant the police would do a sweep.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, if you were in the sweep and you were just a civilian coming home, you got picked up.
It was like that. Just throw a net on the streets and grab them.
Bingo.
Okay.
That's how bad it was. So it was nasty in 1980. I had given up on church. I had given up on going to treatment. I'd given up on, the 12-step fellowships. I'd given up on everything. And I walked in fear, in hate. There comes a point when you hit bottoms like that, whether it's even Park Avenue park bench, by the way, pain is pain. It's the emotional thing in here that you can't do it anymore. You can take the beatings, you can take the arrests, but something in here gets our attention. And there comes a point it came a point for me where I realized I reek. I haven't had a bath or a shower in God knows how long. My clothes are filthy. I was wearing these construction boots. I'll never forget this. The right boot didn't have a front. It was missing. And my sweat socks were blackened at that point. My fingernails were filthy. And I'm cold and sweating in the month of June in New York. It's muggy and hot. Cold and sweating at the same time. I weigh right now probably 200 and couple of pounds right now. It's all COVID weight, by the way. I'm losing some of it. But I weighed $130 back then. Yeah. So if you could just get an idea, 70 pounds lighter than this. I looked the part.
I was a 130 guy.
You too. Yeah. It's awful. And you feel weak and feeble.
Yeah. And the sick part about it is I loved it. Before that moment of whether it's Park Avenue, Park Bench, I was even addicted to that life of being weak and feeble and drawn out. And I guess you just get so rooted and carved into that being that you just,
For me, I couldn't take it. I just wanted out. I even tried to take my life. I couldn't do it. And I was going to get arrested again. I was going to get shot or stabbed. Something bad was going to happen. Walking with impending doom. I didn't like it anymore. I just walked with a lot of hate. Despised everything. And if I saw occasionally what looked like a couple or an individual or a family that seemed to be okay in their own skin, going to the store, or going to church, or getting in their car, washing their car.
Yeah.
I said, how do you do that? And I hated them for it.
Yes. I used to see people going for walks.
Yeah, how do you do that? I'll tell you a funny story. But when I got into my 7 treatments, and this was what's insane about addiction. After all of that, I'm laying in treatment, and I missed the euphoric recall of the action on the streets, the running and gunning. But something was going on inside of me that was greater than me. And I remember walking into a counselor's office, which I would have never done in the 6 previous treatment centers. And I walked in. Her name was Penny Sue. And I said to Penny Sue Blum, bless her heart, wherever she is, I said to her, I need to talk to you. What's up, honey? I says, I don't feel like getting drunk right now. I says, but I'm thinking about the action on the streets and going to the liquor store. She got me an apple juice. She sat me down on a couch, and even I had a desk. She said, let's talk about that. And we flushed it out. Those are the little pieces that God does for us. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle. What's one little piece going to do? It puts the puzzle together. It was one of those moments of being transparent, no sins of omission. Here's what's going on. And I got through that. And got through another one. That's all God working. Sometimes we think God's going to part the seas for us. So it's a little thing like that. Like, hey, Scott, I'm not doing okay today. Let's talk about it. Now it's behind me rather than it becomes plaque on the soul.
Right.
But I remember I was coming off like a 3 or 4 day drunk, and I was in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. And I didn't live there yet. I don't know how I wound up in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, but I come out of the block. I'm wandering the streets in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. And there was, in Brooklyn, you have a lot of these bagel coffee shops all over the place. And I see this guy, it's a Sunday morning, which was probably my worst days out there. He had the Sunday Daily News, which was a big volume of paper. He had a coffee, and he had a little bag, probably a bagel, and he's walking his dog. It was a Norman Rockwell photo, if you will.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I had every expletive you can think of about this guy, Mr. Perfect, Mr. Going and get his coffee on a Sunday morning. But I wanted, how do you do that? And I kid you not, I got my first apartment of all places, Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. And I'd walk up the block, maybe 100 feet to the corner, make a left, and another 100 feet, there was a bagel stall. On a Sunday morning, I live alone. I ordered a dozen bagels. I came out with a bag this big, a coffee and a Sunday paper. The only thing I was missing was the dog.
Yeah.
And I looked up at the sun and I said, God, I did it. I'm legitimate today. A dozen bagels. It was absurd and it was fabulous.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's almost like, more will be revealed. He kind of showed you what you were walking towards.
And I love Sunday mornings till right now, till this moment, 35 years later. When I was out there, I hated Sunday mornings. It was just a bad time.
Yeah,
it was a
same.
moment, everything slowed up on a Sunday. And it was that moment where I was forced to reflect on what I'm doing with my life. I hated Sunday mornings. I love Sunday mornings. I wake up with my wife, my best friend on the planet.
Beautiful soul.
Thank you. And we plan our day. We know we're going to be, South Florida, we're going to maybe sit by the pool. We're going to go shopping. We're going to go to church tonight, go to a meeting. It's just, I love Sunday mornings. In football season, sometimes I'm on the road. I'll come home and Marion's has dinner in the oven and we'll sit down and watch some football. I love Sundays today. It's probably my favorite day of the week compared to, it's the 180 on a spiritual path compared to a life live on self-will path.
Yeah, I'm a big morning guy. Like my weekends are my just blessed time where I can wake up without any pressing responsibilities, stumble around the backyard, with a cup of coffee and just move through the day and see what happens.
Listen, man, I've said a million times, it sounds as corny as heck, but a hot Saturday night for me sometimes is Marion's cooking dinner and I'm doing the laundry in our apartment. I'm folding the towels and putting the clothes away. And there's a thing we're going to watch on Netflix. We're going to sit down, have dinner. I fold the laundry. The house is clean. There's food in the cupboard. We're healthy. We're sober. And we're going to sit down and watch some goofy chick flick on Netflix because she likes that. And it's a great night. I don't have to be out there burning the town up and regretting it the next morning. How often, and it could happen to some of us in recovery, but how often back in the day was today's problems because of last night's solutions? Yeah, I don't want to live like that anymore.
Nope. And you're right. It is a 180-degree turn in every regard. Yeah. The answer was right. The answer was right in front of me the whole time, which was simplicity and practicality of God.
Amen. Absolutely.
What was I going to say?
We can sometimes, we hear the term, that's really is best put, if I heard in a while. We tend to hear, well, I'm going to follow God, I'm going to do God's will, and run parallel with punitive. It's going to be painful. Well, it might be painful. There's going to be a pruning of the tree. Sure. I might have to let go of some things, but it is not punitive. In fact, in the narrowing of that road, there's a whole lot more road to walk. Just not many people are going to take the narrow road because they look at it as punitive. Yeah, and it's practical and simple.
It's a script to freedom. Thank God there's a narrow gate, Thank Amen. God there's a narrow gate because it doesn't allow so much room for blunders that had caused me the true pain.
No.
There's holiness in the snip, the master vine dresser. That's what I always had wanted was discipline of character.
And if we take a look at what's going on, sadly, in this great country and even globally, that has been to a lot, and I'm not talking about a political affiliation.
Okay.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day, so I don't care about that. But if we look at the, dare I say, ungodliness of a lot of behavior out there, It isn't even like, okay, Scott, you say up, I say down. Let's have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
Maybe I can learn from you, you can learn from me. And at the end of the day, we'll agree to disagree. Let's go for lunch. Let's go
Yes.
for dinner. It's no, you disagree with me, I'm going to destroy you.
Yep.
It's happening all over. And the amount of violence at a level I've never seen before. It's all ungodliness.
And sadly, God is often a belief in God is often a part of that division.
I know that. And God is under attack right now. Religion, church is under attack right now. So there's, we can make more laws and have more restrictions on stuff. They help with a society. You have laws, you break the law. But do I need a law to stop me from committing a homicide? Of course not. Do I need a law to say not to break into my neighbor's house? Of course not. They're there. Society needs them. But what we see is spiritual warfare going on right now. You put all the laws you want in. When there's a vacuum of no God, bad things happen. And I don't want to turn your program into that to talk for another show. But as someone who's seeking recovery, who has a demon called addiction breathing all over them, we know that a human power, good motives, are not going to really save me. They might rescue me for a short time. At the end of the day, I need something much greater with unlimited love and mercy to pull me out of that kind of pit and keep me there so I can go to work for him, whoever that power is, whatever we believe in.
100%. Like I always talk about like want, desire, wishing, and motives to be better is sandbox compared to what it's actually going to take to do that. Like if wishing was to be, if a wish was good enough for me to be a better man, I would have wished and got that wish when I was 19 years old, So it's like, you mentioned spiritual warfare, right? And so I talk about this all the time. If there's spiritual warfare going on inside of me, then it's not possible for me not to bring warfare in these outside circumstances of my life. Like one of my favorite proverbs is Proverbs 27:19. And it says, just as water reflects the face, so one's life in the heart of a man will reflect in his outward life. Just as water reflects the face, so one's life will reflect the heart of a man. So it's like there was war going on inside of me for years. So as a result, I brought war into my life. And if I played a movie of my day to you in the outside circumstances of my life, you would say that man is at war on the inside.
Yeah, the mouth will speak what the heart is full of all the time. Absolutely.
By their fruits.
Yeah, and that's right. And very often, in my line of work, about this close to a client, and I can do a fair assessment by perhaps by the way they're dressed. I can do a fair assessment perhaps by what their room looks like, what their bed looks like, by their hygiene. There's little boxes you can check off, but the eyes never lie. And so you'll look at someone and you'll make not intimidation eye-to-eye contact, because that can be used as a weapon, but just have a conversation, look into someone's eyes, and very often you could say there's turmoil or there's some sort of peace and okayness in those eyes all the time. Reflection of the soul.
Yeah.
If this person is aligned with the soul, is he or she operating out of the soul? And again, this, I'm not saying we're going to become monks or 24/7 is going to happen. The human condition's flawed, it's broken. We're going to get caught every once in a while, I should say. But when we're operating out of the soul, we travel a lot lighter. For me personally, and this is for me, my God put one cross on my back. Yep. Whatever that cross is for some of us, it could be problems in life or, God forbid, health, whatever it might be. God laid a cross on my life to keep me close to the ground, humble. Yeah? He didn't ask me to put another one on my back. And so that one cross I carry joyfully because he put it there. Keeps me close to the ground, remembers who's in charge, and when he's ready, he'll take it off. But he didn't say, Pete, I need you to put 3 or 4 more on, or I'm going to volunteer to do that in an effort to live life on self will run riot. And a lot of folks are just adding additional crosses and then blaming God for it. There's a great story of this gentleman who was a very, very devout Christian, going to all the service, observing all the holidays, and really thought of himself as somewhat of a real spiritual man believer. And he starts to get ill. After several visits at his doctor's, the doctor says, listen, you need to make arrangements. Your time is short. You're gravely ill. And instead of, thanking God for the time here and looking forward to meeting his creator, he's irate. And he curses God, curses his religious community, and just turns his back on it. And one night he has a dream, and in his dream, he's walking on this huge field. And he sees all these people, and a couple of 100,000 people walking with crosses on their back. And they're singing hymns, and they're smiling, and they're happy with this cross. And he's got one on his back, and he's even more irate. This is nonsense. Yeah. And they're walking on this field to this edge of a cliff, and he says, well, I'm not doing that. He goes into some barn, and he starts cutting the sword down where it's really manageable and light. And he says, I got over on everyone. I'll show God. Well, when they do come to the edge of that cliff, all these people lay down their cross and cross over into eternity. And this guy's cross can't make it, it's too short. And he's stuck in that.
Yeah.
So I carry that cross, And I don't mean God has punished me or selected me. He's just put across a burden. You can say mine is alcoholism. I don't know. I don't look at so much of a burden anymore. It's given me an incredible life. But whatever it might be, finances or things like that. That God, it's like as if God doesn't know what's going on. It opens up the door, then how come there's so much pain and suffering in the world? And we can read the story of Job in Scripture. And some of the answers to those questions, I'd be a fool to say I had the answer to. I don't. But I'd rather bear the pain of waiting for God than bear the pain of going on without God.
Yeah.
I don't want to get up there one day and he's going to say, I never knew you. You denied me there. Maybe I deny you here. I don't know. But he's given me something to do the best to, I'm hesitant to say a reflection of him. I don't want to put myself in some great light here. You're looking at a flawed character here. I'm the car that leaks oil. When I drive away, there's an oil spot. That's me. It squeaks, got some dents. But that's my goal, to bring light where there's darkness, to bring forgiveness where there's none, to bring tolerance where there's none. That's the goal.
It's a good goal.
Yeah.
So, we were talking about faith a lot, and, often you hear the opposite of faith is fear. Do you think that fear is something that we're always going to have to contend with?
Biblically,
or what do you think of fear as a whole? Like, what is the power of fear, and do you think it's something we're always going to have to contend with?
Biblically, it's strength. By the way, they use strength.
Biblically, it's strength.
Strength to combat fear. Fear to me. Now, there's 2 types of fears. God forbid we're in the studio and the fire alarms go off and we smell smoke, and God forbid we see flames. We need to get out. Call 911. Yeah. If you're in the ocean and it has the black flags up, strong, what they call those riptides, you're going to be real mindful about going in the water. Common sense. Psychologically induced fear. And there's an author, a lot of them talk about, Eckhart Tolle does really a good job on this. He's wonderful. Psychologically induced fear. That's all coming from the mind. That's what it does. Fear is usually pointing to the future. I live in the wreckage of the future. I'm leading with paranoia. It's all the past is usually resentments, regrets, remorse. And if they find out in the future, oh my God. So fear is always pointing to the future. It's all coming from the mind. And because it's coming from my mind, I believe it to be true. Therefore, it has a whole lot of power. But if someone sat with me and said, Pete, I have this fear about something, I said, that's nonsense. What are you worried about, man? You're
Right.
not even there yet. But if it's mine, it's very, very real. It has credentials. It's credible. It's all coming from the head. I would think that I have thoughts. We've all shared. I'm having these thoughts, and they're bad thoughts. Do I really have thoughts, or do they have a grip on me?
Yeah.
So leaning into God for courage, for strength, for direction. I'm afraid right now. I'm afraid of an hour from now. I'm afraid of tomorrow. We lean into, always about leaning into God. Whatever it is you think I need to walk through this. Maybe it's just when I was a kid and my mom would shut the lights to tuck us in at night and leave a little night light on by the side of the bed, a little bulb. I would look around and I would swear there was a man in my room, and I call Mom and she would come in and it was just a couch or a chair or a stuffed animal, you know. And so what I need to understand is very often my mind is creating things that aren't there. I believe it to be true. I need to literally turn the light on, God's light. God, I'm afraid of around the corner. God will walk me to it and through it, you know. If we knew who walked beside us at all times,
Yeah.
we would never be afraid.
Yeah.
But we have this predator called the thinking mind. The mind is a four-letter word that wants no part of ease and comfort in God and spiritual walk or religious walk. It's going to throw a monkey wrench in all the time. It's going to come up with those questions that it knows you can't answer, but it'll make you stumble a little bit to question God. That's what the mind does. Because if I get a real relationship, an intimacy with God, an integration with God, that means the mind is now out of work. It doesn't want to do that. It's frustrated with stillness. That's why one of the things meditation is so difficult, because the mind's out of work for a moment. It doesn't like stillness. So we get to use the mind. For example, you're walking down the street and you see a homeless person and something says, hey, I got a pocket full of money. I can give that person some money and buy them lunch. It feels like it came from, hey, that was a great idea. That came from down in the soul. And if it kind of makes its way up and you go, great idea, charity. That's all God. The mind would say, why should I give them money? Plus, I'm in a hurry. And the Rolodex of excuses.
Right.
The mind's all about me all the time. The only time I'm going to help you if it's coming from the mind, if I look good. It's a predator. Don't need it.
So in reference to this, you had mentioned Eckhart Tolle, and in seeking and studying, I'm a big reader. I like to read a lot of books, and I've always been drawn towards spiritually centered books. I guess you could say self-help books, right?
Okay.
So there's been a lot of profound books or works that I've read that have really shifted my perspective spiritually and has started to move me in a different way. Can you talk about books or spiritual leaders or things that you've studied along the way that have really shifted and moved you in a certain way?
Well, one of my I mentioned Eckhart Tolle. I remember when his book Power Now came out. I mean, we all went and get it. And I was told by one of my teachers / mentors, don't read spiritual books, work with them. Big difference.
Yeah.
So we started working with Eckhart Tolle. Thomas Merton is probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite out there. He's long gone.
Isn't that the God Illuminated Cook? Isn't that, or Seeds of Contemplation?
That's him.
That's him. That's Thomas Merton.
More than a handful of other pieces.
He was a saint, was he? Was he not? Was he a saint? Thomas Merton?
Trappist monk.
Trappist monk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wayne Dyer, who was a self-help guy for a long time.
Yeah, the Tao.
He had some sort of conversion or something. He was wonderful. There's a great book called The Spiritual Art of Imperfection.
Yeah.
I forget how to spell I forget the author's name. Kurtz. I'm not sure.
Okay.
The Four Agreements is another book, Don Miguel Ruiz.
Game changer.
Oh God, there's many of them I work with, and I'm not getting them right now, but I can tell you off the rip, Merton is the guy I've been, James Finley, that's who I was thinking of. James Finley does a lot of what I would call interpretations of Merton's work. You can even YouTube James Finley's wonderful, wonderful man. And I'm forgetting a whole bunch.
How about Emmett Fox? You ever read any Emmett Fox?
Some.
Okay.
Some. There is, I like, nuts, you mentioned self-help. I guess depending on perspective, self-help, spiritual help. I like books that aim at the soul.
Yeah.
And speak truth. And for me, Merton does a lot of that. Yeah.
In reference to that, aiming at the soul.
Anthony DeMello's another one. He's also
I'm literally reading his book right now, Awareness.
Awareness, yeah.
That's hilarious.
When we get done, I'll drive home and remember 20 other authors.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess they ostracized him from the, he was a Jesuit saint, an Indian Jesuit saint, and they kind of discarded him because he was just he wasn't talking from that reference point. I mean, he says a lot of controversial stuff. Well,
Thich Nhat Hanh, Living Buddha, Living Christ.
Great one.
I got to see him at the Beacon Theater years ago in New York, and coincidentally, I was walking out of the theater and heading down the block to my car, and on the side of the theater, they got the stage entrances, and he happened to walk out, and he was as close to me as you were. His face glowed. I was taken in by it. His eyes and his face just glowed. It was just remarkable. But with Thich Nhat Hanh, America thought he was a spy, and his country thought he was a traitor. And he was just a man of peace. And he, and I don't know all the specifics, but he and Merton were trying to, get the two religions to kind of find a middle road, and they were having discussions, and they both were unpopular because of that. But they were two wonderful, wonderful, to me, spiritual giants.
That's a good point. So I think we see that throughout history. Like when people start to truly live in their truth, you get hate from the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, no human is perfect. There was one who walked the earth, and they crucified him. He was perfect. But all the teachers, and they killed Gandhi. They shot Martin Luther King. They shot John Kennedy.
Bob Marley.
They are. Another guy. I mean, think about it. It's just, I don't know why that happens. They're dining with God right now. They're in a good place. But it's said that if you speak spiritual truth in the world, it's embraced by many and hated by a lot. I wish we need a Billy Graham in our world right now. We need that true north.
Yeah.
I don't think we have it right now. But Billy Graham was just, I listened to him so much. I was just a wonderful, just incredible man.
I used to read his letters to Billy Graham in the newspaper. You remember those?
No, I don't.
People would write in with a question.
Okay.
And then he would respond in the Sunday newspaper.
Yeah. He was called to do that, and just ordained, blessed, given favor. I mean, that was his thing. There's some folks out there who I listen to often. Pastor Alan Jackson out of Tennessee, who's just, I was sharing with my wife, we want to go to his church, and I'm a Catholic, he's a Christian, but he's just absolutely just one of those people who speak truth in a very loving, articulate way. So they're out there. Yeah, the Spirit will lead you to that, by the way. You don't have to figure it out. The Spirit will lead you there.
What is spirit to you?
God. Mm-hmm.
And it presents itself. So we just have to learn how to, I mean, for me, it's been about...
Operate out of the pause. I'm sorry.
Oh, say that again?
Operate out of the pause.
Operate out of the pause.
If you watch, let's take an Olympic diving event. And sometimes they'll walk to the edge of the board and they'll look around and they'll do one or two things. Close their eyes and take a deep breath and then go. Or sometimes they'll walk back, then they'll walk out and jump. They're operating out of the pause. They're getting still. They're getting all the distractions away. They're probably looking over going, wow, there's my mom and dad. There's my husband or wife. There's the cameras. There's the judges. Oh my God, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
Operate out of the pause. And for me, operating out of the pause is, okay, God, spirit, soul, truth. What do I do? What do I say? Sometimes just do nothing. Just be here. Because our doing comes out of being anyway. We're very busy at doing.
Yeah.
And then we have to apologize for it. But if I do get the being part right, or get connected to that, very often my doing is going to reflect that. You alluded to that a little while ago.
Yeah.
A reflection of this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Always is. So in the 7 years that I've been sober, my conception of God seems to always, I don't want to say always, but it's changed. It always seems to be fluid. Can you speak on that? Do you have experience with that? In the 35 years you've been walking this thing, how has it changed?
Absolutely. We evolve. We awaken more. We get clearer on things. Life changes. We have more transformation. We get information, but we have more transformation. For me, I'm a cradle Catholic. So I was brought to my religious community. I was praying to the carpenter, and there's God out there, and all of that. And when I got sober, I mean, I was never an atheist. A lot of us come in a little agnostic, but I believed in the carpenter my whole life. I mean, he was there. I'm just not sure if he knows I'm around or paying attention to me, and I probably annoyed him so much, and it was like that. But what I did was I was interested in that soul, that spirit, and that just came to me from the get-go. And I would go to non-denominational, I would go to Christian, I would go to spiritual speakers, I would just chasing where something, I was waiting, not consciously, but it's somewhere inside me waiting for something to say, yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And at some point I got some traction. And what's interesting, we mentioned the 180. I'm back to, I belong to this huge worldwide group of folks who help me, but I'm back to my Catholic church, and it is incredibly important to me. It's vital to me. So I'm back to where I started, but with new conceptions. It's changed, and it's changed over 35 years. And during those 35 years that I haven't, that I've been sober, sometimes it's been cloudy. I'm not sure. Sometimes I think this is it and I'm wrong, but I'm chopping wood and carrying water. I'm doing that. Thank you, God has given me that kind of endurance and passion just to keep chop wood, carry water, chop wood, carry water. And then you get the aha moments that make up for all the times you weren't so sure. Those a couple of aha moments go, knowing that I'm known by my Creator, keep moving. Keep going. So yeah, we should be evolving and awakening and changing. And a water sits there for too long, it gets kind of icky.
Yeah.
A river that's flowing, a stream that's flowing, it's beautiful.
I think there's actually a scripture that says that those who believe in me, from their belly will flow living waters.
Amen.
Living waters,
Right.
movement. Right. We got some people sent in some questions for you. I would love to play them, but while the guys are getting that ready. For me, what has happened is I always wanted to figure out God. I always wanted to, like you said, search and then see the Red Seas part. He's going to talk to me in the burning bush. I'm going to go on this journey, get the 10 Commandments, and I'm going to figure it all out. It's right. This is what it is. He needs to sit down in front of me and say, this is the way we need to go. Mm-hmm. Everything has changed in my life when I stopped trying to figure it out. When I let God show me who God was, just enough, and it's kind of like you're fighting, you're trying, you're bending, you're wrestling. And then once you finally stop, it's almost like God's like, all right, I've been waiting for you to stop that. Let me show you how I work.
And here's the thing too. Okay, we find out Today we learn all the secrets of the universe. Okay, now what?
Yeah.
Now I get on 95 going north to south and there's traffic and I'm banging on the steering wheel. So what?
Yeah.
I find out the secrets of the universe and I look at my bank account and it's not where I want it to be. Okay. I find out the secrets of the universe and my girlfriend or my wife or my husband or my lover is leaving me.
So
So
what?
I have the secrets of the universe. What sort of transformation have I had? Where am I with God today? How have I evolved? What does my walk look like through adversity? That doesn't mean we're going to go, oh my God, I'm nervous right now. I'm sad right now. I'm upset right now. That's human condition. Of course, that's part of being alive. But the walk, I'm not flinging chairs through windows and cursing people and I'm going to get them. It's like, okay, God, what do I do here? Pete, why don't you ask somebody for help or guidance? Okay, hey, Scott, you got a minute? I need to talk to you about this. I'm not sure what to do. I need a helping hand, whatever it is. The walk is different. And the walk truly is the talk, is the sermon. So who needs to find out the secrets of the universe? I go to some university and debate them with somebody who disagrees with me. So they get paid a lot of money for that. Big deal. Have I evolved? Have I awakened? Where am I with God? And I think that's really what he wants us to do. Love others if I have loved you. Done. Simple. Practical. Most good ideas are simple. Because something is deep, it doesn't have to be complicated, and sometimes things sound complicated. It doesn't mean they're deep. God is not going to present us with algebra when we're learning how to count to 10. He's not going to do that. That would be a cruel God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that. We got a couple, we got a question. Yeah. Do you want to grab those headphones and maybe just, you can just do one of these, hold it up to the ear.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Veronica. This question is for Pete.
Up?
With so many years, how do we stay in love with this process?
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Hi, my name is Veronica. This question's for Pete. With so many years, how do we stay in love with this process?
Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Veronica, for sending that in. That's a good question.
Yeah. I give all credit to God. I love the effect produced by it. I love having a relationship with God. I love being of service to other people. I love being around people who are faithful, who love God, who love recovery, who love being around drunks and addicts. It's exciting. It's passionate. Why would I not fall in love with it and want to continue on that path? And the other thing is, there was so much pain and misery in my life, I never want to go back anymore.
It's fair.
May I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
So in reference to staying on the path, I have been clean a little bit over, or exactly a year today upon this recording. So I wanted to ask your opinion on something. For me, the staying on the path is essentially my sobriety, my clean time snowballs into an extreme interest in improving every aspect of my life as actively as I possibly can. Is that something that you find to be the case with yourself, or is it something that just comes naturally by virtue of you doing what you think you should, or is it, what's the correlation there in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm not going to give you an opinion. I'll give you experience. And when we're new, my experience has been suddenly I'm concerned about my body. I want to get in shape and I need to make $1 million by next week. And I need a girlfriend in my life and I need a new car. And that's good. We got some excitement about life and all the while knowing I can't do all of those things by tomorrow, but it's exciting. I like being sober now. It's fun again. Having said that, we get so busy trying to do those things, we forget to stop and say, God, where do you want me today? And because of you being sober, you suddenly have a zest for life. And hopefully, a love for God, which is going to be the most important relationship that I've ever had in my life, falling in love with God. And I think that's what he wants you to do, love others as he loves you. Then you'll go make money, and then you'll go get a new car, and you'll find a relationship. But let him bring that to you, okay? And even in adversity, don't doubt God, ever.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I wanted to actually bring that up. You mentioned adversity, right? So in 35 years, talk about some of like the greatest struggles you've had along the way.
Oh God.
And the shifts they brought.
I'm sorry.
And the shifts they brought within you. The shifting, the spiritual shift, perhaps.
But adversity in the last 35 years.
Because there's this misconception that, you know, we get on a spiritual path, we're going to take up our mats and walk again and just float up into the heavens and everything's going to be good.
No, life happens and life's problematic. We live in a world of impermanence. And so things happen. And sometimes our own willfulness brings us in there, you know, and then we get out again. But I've lost a number of friends, first off, in 35 years, and they weren't all ODs. A couple of friends, a dear friend, Ken Paul, rest his soul.
I remember Ken.
Yeah, got cancer and was gone quickly, and he left us way too soon. But he's with his Creator, and he's wonderful. A lot of people passing. I've had a couple of health scares on my own. I would call myself a hard worker, a loyal worker, a dedicated worker, and God has given me some gifts. I'm without at the risk of sounding boastful, I'm pretty good at what I do. I believe in what I do in the field God has put me in. But I've always have been overworked and underpaid, and so I've experienced incredible at times financial difficulties. I keep chopping wood and carrying water. My dad getting ill a few times. My dad's ill again. We thought we were going to lose him right after Thanksgiving. We thought we were going to lose my dad. That's tough. My dad went about 6 foot 230 in his day, alpha male, tough as they come. Tough guy. And watching him dwindle to 115 pounds, and on some days not as coherent as he used to be and very vulnerable. It's tough to watch.
Yeah.
So going through divorce, I remember I got married. I bought a house, had the 2 cars in the garage. And when the divorce happened, she got the cars, the house, moved her boyfriend in and took all the money. You know, it's a little tough to deal with. Yeah, seriously.
A bit.
But again, okay, God, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm leaning in here. And just keep me buoyant for another day because I'm going down right now. And he has.
Yeah.
And then things get, taken away. One of the things, I'm grateful for, and I would have never said this when I had a year sober, by the way, never said this, wouldn't even come to me. But besides all the wonderful gifts that God gives, living a sober life, get very grateful for the things that God removes too. The things I thought I needed to be okay, not necessarily the things I need to be okay. A lot of them are coming from here. Now, we all need money and shelter and food. We got that. And we like to have an abundance of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at what point is enough where I'm now gluttonous about this, or I'm greedy about it? And so learn to live within my means. But I've had my share of those kind of hardships or adversity, and anyone's on this planet for a number of years is going to share. This is what I went through. It's just part of life. I just don't hate or blame God for it anymore. I don't do it. I don't blame God. I've negotiated with God. I've bargained with God. I've had a heated discussion with God, but I've never hated or blamed God. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Adversity has always pushed me into a new level that I wanted to be.
Yeah, sometimes God will, if you kind of squeeze the things that are in the way out of the way, and we go, why? I don't understand. I can't believe. Come on, God. And then we get out, we're a fine-tuned product.
Right. Damn, I really wanted that. One of the scariest prayers in the world, God, please remove everything in my life that's keeping me from you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the scariest prayers in the world.
Yeah, man, I get it.
We got one more question, right?
Oh, okay.
And then I want to get into the Archway Foundation.
Okay. Let's see, how do we do this?
You can actually flip it opposite.
Hello,
There you
everybody
go.
at FTG and Peter.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, everybody at FTG and Peter. My name is Brian. I've been in recovery for multiple years and have found a solution for my drug addiction and alcoholism through doing step work. I have a two-part question. First being, do we feel like drug addiction and alcoholism has evolved from what it once was? The second part is, do we think, or Peter, do you think that traditional 12-step work is still as effective today as it once was back in the day? Thanks.
Well,
Thanks, Brian.
to answer the second question first, it's like saying, is God as effective today as he was back then? Yes. It's constant. The teachers change. The messages can get watered down and gobbled. They can be one of convenience. They can be used for profit. But the message itself is the message. It hasn't changed. It's the person delivering the message. That's really where it can fluctuate. God is God. God doesn't change. God doesn't move. God doesn't change colors, if you will. But the people delivering the message, you got people like on TV, these TV pastors, if you will, and they have private jets and, mansions and give me more money. And some of us can look at that with some contempt. And then you get a Billy Graham or another pastor who's really speaking truth. And you kind of get a try. So they're all talking about God, but it's the delivery. As far as addiction and alcoholism evolving, my experience, especially in my career, I can safely say that addiction and drug addiction, alcoholism is also deadly. It hasn't become undeadly. But what I've seen, especially over in my field, in my line of work over the last, I would say 15 years, 10 years, is the tragedies that go around the block now, the amount of overdoses, the fentanyl that has hit the street now. From what I understand, it's laced in everything. The horror show of watching someone have to be buried at 19 years old and they used one time. I've seen that. And the crack addiction, which is still happening. I remember when it hit and how that changed from maybe, a guy who was a hardcore drunk, and I'm not minimizing that. Now you get the guy who comes in who's got even dare I say it, a criminal mentality in the drug game. It's a different walk. Women who are prostituting themselves for years for the price of a drug, a crack or methamphetamine or whatever it might be, and have children who have done that horrific walk with her, witnessing this stuff. And I've seen too much of that, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure it was there, but I've seen a huge change. And to be honest with you, even in the field I'm in, it goes through this change every so many years of a new methodology and a new medicine that's going to come in to treat addicts and alcoholics. And I've seen the devastation. It would be a male or female coming in their 40s or 50s and are tore up from the floor up. Now I got 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds coming in with the same story. I can't tell you how many young folks I would sit down with. I would ask them, how old are you? 23, 24. How many treatment centers you've been in? 15.
Yeah.
I said, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. How old were your first treatment center? Maybe they were adolescent. I was 18. So hold on, let me get this right. From 18 to 23, you made 15 treatments. You basically lived in treatment.
Yeah.
What part are you getting? Who's not doing their job? Are you not getting the truth? And when you hear a 23 or a 25-year-old story, how did you survive it? They've already been in and out of prison. They've been locked up a bunch of times. No one wants to touch them. No one wants to help them. Some of the young ladies come in, know what it's like to work the streets as a street worker now, and dancing, not dancing like on TV, dancing and do hustle. And I said, oh my God. And they have kids with like different wives and kids with different husbands. And when they land in front of me, they're covered in shame and embarrassment because they finally come to and say, I can't believe I've been living this way. I didn't want to talk about this anymore. I didn't want to even broach this subject. I'm so loaded with embarrassment and shame and humiliation. 23, 25 years old. Yeah. So in a sense, if you want to use the word, how has it evolved? I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think like mental health is become like a very stark thing. I see, sometimes it's not addressed, and I feel like people have no shot at changing their life. And then when they finally become beaten enough into a state of being reasonable with their mental health, and that's addressed along with the tenets of recovery, I see change.
Yeah, it has to be addressed. One of the change I've seen as well, I've witnessed, is a large number of young folks coming in with mental health issues.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side is the underbelly of that is I've seen too many facilities diagnose someone with mental health who really didn't have it just to medicate because they're money driven, they're profit driven. And that's a topic for another day. I've seen that, I've witnessed that, and it would turn my stomach. That this person's coming in and they appear to be bipolar, but we don't know that yet. So let's not diagnose them as bipolar when it's never been diagnosed before. They're coming off a horrific drug run or drunk, and they have 2 days sober. They're going to be up and down. Let's not stamp them bipolar today. The families never come forward and say, yes, they were when they were 15 or 16. But it pays a lot of bills when you start medicating and doing that stuff. So there's an underbelly to that. But we need to address, the facilities out there need to understand young folks are coming in with some mental health issues. And quite frankly, it's heartbreaking. That's way above my pay grade, by the way. But it's heartbreaking.
Sure.
Say, how could someone be this way at such a young age? And when you sit and chat with them and you get into a discussion about their families, not all, but many of them, the conditions at which they grew up. Oh my God, mom has men coming in regularly, dad's MIA, dad's a violent drunk, a sex addict. So many women have been molested by either, if not their dad or their brothers or their uncles, their grandparents, and they're coming in. It was a big secret, and everyone's using. How do we put this together?
Yeah.
The person needs and has to get better, but there's a whole lot of mess that with God, and God gives us professionals to try to put that together. It's not going to happen in 30 days. Yeah. It's not going to happen in 40 days in a treatment center. This is going to be post-treatment to continue that kind of help. There's a lot to be put back together to get properly diagnosed and the proper medication also. It's a road ahead that they need to treat properly and with the right folks. But I've seen it happen, and I've seen people get in the saddle and ride.
Yeah, same.
And have great lives.
It's not impossible.
No, not at all. Listen, man, there's hope for everybody. I don't care who you are, there's hope. as long as we have God and it doesn't look like he's going anywhere, there's hope.
Talk to me about the Archway Foundation.
Beautiful. We just took over a new office space in West Boca, and we have morning lectures and afternoon lectures. We're a nonprofit, tax-deductible donation. We need your money to help continue the cause for food and amenities and things, all the services we offer. But we have some really good folks who really like what we're doing and donated handsome donations to treat the addict and alcoholic, perhaps who's been through multiple treatment centers and wants to come to what looks more spiritual than clinical. We have what looks like an IOP where they come, they work during the day, and they'll come to the lectures at night. We have some folks coming in the morning and at night. We have our alumni who help and support us. If they're listening, I would like more of your support and help. But they get lives and they kind of move on. But it started under a different name about 6 years ago, where we had our clients or our guests living there on the property, and we would have this spiritual immersion type of curriculum. We had this wonderful, wonderful woman, Dr. Crystal Bloom, who was our clinical person. She's absolutely fabulous, probably one of the best out there. For those folks who had mental health. And we had our nurse practitioner watching the medication. It was a beautiful thing. But things change, and so we moved to a different location, and we have some great things happening, which I can't talk about just now, right down the road for us for some growth and expansion that's going to make the Archway Foundation available to a lot more folks. So I'm really excited. It has me excited again. I've been in this field for a long time. I'm only 18 years old. I just look this old because of the business, but I'm really excited about it. And so it's wonderful. And you can go to our website, thearchwayfoundation.org, thearchwayfoundation.org, and you'll learn more about us.
I love what you guys are doing, man. I mean, I've been a part of the walk even back then when it had a little bit of a different form. I know all the alumni. I know Dr. Krista Bloom. I know every person behind the scenes, and I have loved and supported, what you guys have been doing from the jump. And I am grateful to even be a little bit of 6 degrees a part of it.
And I need to give a plug to the folks over at Temperance House, the CrossFit place, because you guys have taken those guests and we bring them there and you guys train them and teach them, and they get really lathered up about this new life of physical fitness, and they're excited about it. And I tease them all the time about it. But now my wife is involved, which means I'm going to be there. Happy wife, happy life. And I'm an old school, go to the gym and go for a run guy. But I made a commitment to her. I'll be there Tuesday. In fact, this morning I said it's 4th of July. They're closed, right? She says, no, we'll be there. But Temperance House have really taken those young folks and treated them really well.
Community, man. And temperance training. There's a lot of awesome foundations out there that when we can blend our purpose together, we really have the ability to resurrect lives. And that's all Chris Murphy, because, I watched it change his life. He got me into temperance training. And so, anyways, that's beautiful, man. I love what you guys are doing, and I'll always shout your name from the rooftop. Before we wrap up, there's a couple questions I want to end with. What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten and the worst piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Whoa. The worst piece of advice I've ever gotten was, don't do it, you'll never make it. And I got that as a young boy, and I got that as recent as maybe 6 months ago. The naysayers. The best piece of advice I got were things, with God, all things are possible.
If there's somebody listening right now that's struggling in a bad spot, what's something you would want to give to them, something you would want to say to them? They just feel like they can't make it. They're just hurting right now, whether it's in a bad spot, years sober, going through something, some type of adversity. What's one thing you would want to impart?
Been there. You can get out. There's hope. It might seem like it's a million miles away. It's right in front of you. You can get out. You don't have to die to addiction. There's hope. There's a way out. There's 12-step fellowships. There's treatment centers. There's people on the firing line. You don't have to die. There is a way out. Because if you had to die from alcoholism, then you'd be interviewing someone else today. I was knocking on death's door in 1988. Just reach out. I need help. There's hotlines you can call. I need help. Someone will come get you and give you help for free. The wonderful thing about the respective 12-step fellowships, you don't need an insurance policy. You don't need money. You don't have to dress nice. You don't have to be the right color or the right religion. You can show up off the street and say, somebody help me, and somebody will help you. You don't have to die anymore.
Pete Marinelli, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with me this morning. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Peace.